to carry on talking about Brexit for you now on the programme. French papers also focusing on what is happening over the Channel. British Prime Minister signing that letter flow.
That really is the photo of the day. We'll see in the international press review that it's all over the British press. It's also in the French press. Let's take a look at the Huffington Post. There it is, that photo of Prime Minister Theresa May at 10 Downing Street, signing that letter that activates Article 10 of the Lisbon Treaty. You can see bon de sortie. Theresa May has signed Britain's release voucher, the ticket out. Today, the British ambassador in Brussels will deliver that letter to the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk.
And of course, this means now 2 years flow of long negotiations that will finalise all the details of this divorce.
This divorce that is going to be complicated, to say the least. Let's take a look at Les Echos, the business daily. Brexit day one. You can see this is a French paper, and they have an English headline here. It's going to be a long 2 years, according to Les Echos, a leap into the unknown and a complete waste of time. If we take a look at their editorial here, essentially Europe has a lot better things to do than spend all this time negotiating this divorce with Great Britain. There are many more strategic issues that the EU should be spending its time and energy on.
Okay, many papers also wonder what the EU is going to look like post-Brexit, if you like. According to Libération, it could go either way.
What is the EU going to look like, and what is Britain going to look like? Well, you can see they have this great front page here, a little bit stereotypical, just a little bit.
It's nice.
With that royal guard with his bearskin hat. We miss you already, or not. You might see it written very small under there. Essentially, Libération has two scenarios for Britain's future, a rosy scenario and a bleak one. In the rosy scenario, Brexit is a success. Theresa May is re-elected in 2020. Growth is booming, and the kingdom remains united. Essentially, Scotland decides to stay. But then there's the bleak scenario. The economy has tanked. Northern Ireland and Scotland are out. And all this is pushing London to come back to a very prosperous European Union. London coming back with its tail between its legs, begging to be brought back in. So you can see what is going to happen in 2024. It might seem like a far way away, but there are these two scenarios, this prosperous one and this destroyed British scenario.
Obviously nothing in between. In the meantime, Flo, I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty, isn't there, particularly for EU citizens who are living in Britain and also British citizens living here in the EU.
Citizens that are in jeopardy, and the focus of Croix, the Catholic paper today, you can see on their front page, they're talking about these citizens who have been uprooted by Brexit and are really worried about their future. So you have all these British citizens living in Europe, like yourself, Stuart, wondering
exactly.
what in the world...
I'm listening very carefully.
Wondering what's going to happen. Well, they're focusing on the situation in Spain, where you can't actually have two nationalities. And so all the British people living in Spain have this choice. Do you stay British, but then you might not be able to work there, or do you become Spanish, but then give up your nationality? There are 380,000 British people living permanently in Spain, so it is a real conundrum for them. Now, of course, you have all the EU citizens that are living in Britain, and a lot of them are actually worried about being deported now. For some, it's actually the straw that broke the camel's back, and Croix interviews one woman, Emmanuelle, who decided to pack her bags after living 17 years in the UK. She says the atmosphere is terribly morose. Now, British people keep telling me, don't take Brexit personally, but I can't help it.
Okay. Well, here in France, of course, the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, is hoping that France will follow in Britain's footsteps with what she calls a Frexit if she's elected president in a few weeks' time.
Marine Le Pen, who met with business leaders yesterday, and apparently they're terrified of her economic program. You can see it here on the front page of Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien. Why the business world is afraid of Le Pen. Well, according to many people in the business world, the consequences of a Le Pen presidency would be catastrophic for France, to say the least. She wants to, of course, leave the EU. The Eurozone wants to come back to the franc. All this would be a cluster bomb for the French economy and essentially lead us to bankruptcy.
And according to Le Figaro, the centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron's economic programme also needs a little bit more scrutiny.
Let's take a look at the front page of Le Figaro. They're talking about doubts that are growing over his economic programme. According to several studies, says Le Figaro, his program won't reboost the economy and actually will cost more than he says. But do take this with a grain of salt, because Le Figaro is, of course, a big cheerleader of the conservative candidate François Fillon, not a big fan of Emmanuel Macron's. But speaking about Fillon and the business world, if we take a look at Les Echos, the business paper, they say that he is the business world's favorite candidate. His program is the most business friendly. For instance, he wants to do away with the very controversial 35-hour working week. And he met with business leaders recently, and apparently he got a very warm round of applause.
Le Figaro says. And candidates, meanwhile, of course, they're entering that final sprint now, aren't they, Flo, before round one of the election? 3.5 weeks to go now.
I know, which can seem like nothing and also an eternity if you're actually running for president. Candidates put their body and soul into the election. How do they hold on? How do they stay in shape? Well, Libé investigates, and each candidate has their little secret recipe to resisting fatigue and stress. Some choose a healthy option like going for a jog. Others choose a less healthy option like having a little drink. But according to Libération, French politics is a lot cleaner than it used to be in the past. And actually, Libé interviews an addiction specialist who says, the best addiction is actually politics itself. Spotlight, power, the desire for a comeback. These are the drugs that keep candidates going. And we must never forget that the biggest high comes from our brain, which is a good news for
That's
the
good
morning.
news. Good news for us as well. With us, it's coffee and the lights. They
Exactly.
help too. Thank you, Flo. Flo Villeneuve with the papers on France 24. Next half hour, with the Brexit victory and Donald Trump's success encouraging European populist movements, we find out how the anti-establishment five-star movement is faring in Italy. That's in the next half hour.